Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Riding the Wave. I'm Mark Healey, the editor-in-chief of the Wave newspaper, Rockaway's newspaper since 1893. Joining us today, he's running for New York State Assembly. His name is Tom Sullivan. Tom, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Tom, obviously this isn't your first rodeo. You've been campaigning now. This is your fourth election. How has the campaigning been so far?
Listen, it's been great. And you mentioned the several campaigns, right? So when I first decided to run, it was an opportunity to get my name out there, which is costly. It's time consuming. And in order to build that recognition, I knew that when I ran once, I would be committed to running twice or possibly a third time. So, as you noted, we did that. And then, with the results of the last election going the way they did, I could not, in good faith and good conscience, end it there. So I'm back a fourth time. I don't quit.
Right.
And, at some point, there will be a time for somebody else to take up the mantle and give it their best effort.
So,
For now,
right. So, right. This is both times that you've gone for office, state office. You've gone against an incumbent, but also an incumbent who is a candidate who has a background that their parents, served in elected office, and so you had that. You're not only fighting you're not only fighting against a district that has more Democrats than Republicans, but you're also fighting against that name recognition.
right.
And in this campaign, kind of like the last campaign too, but in this campaign, we've come across some of the negative mailers that have gone out, that your opponent has sent out. And how have you been handling that? And how have you been responding to some of the negative campaigning that's been going on?
No problem. I've 30 years of being in the military and being in senior positions, 30 years in corporate America, married for 25 years, kids, right? Very little bothers me. What does concern me, though, is, I went through a lot of effort after the last election. I never used the word stolen. I never used the word cheated, ever, ever. And when some people would approach me, I even went to the effort, depending on how they made the comment or what type of comment. I just asked them to be cautious, be careful. Those are strong allegations, and I don't have proof of that. Now, was I completely discouraged having to go through court for the election? So it's interesting how I'm attacked for being an election denier when she's the one, Stacey is the one who denied the results of election night and sued me for voter suppression. So she was the one who was in denial of the election. I accepted the results. You might know that. You might have me on record for that. And I move on. I regrouped and made a decision pretty much immediately that I will be back. And I'm running on my good character, my experience, my education, and not the petty stuff.
It's interesting. You bring up, some of the, I said this the last time we interviewed each other. Well, the last time I interviewed you, we've spoken about this before, is that every time you've run, every race that you've run, you've gotten more votes each time in a progressive way. And obviously losing that last election by 15 votes. And you talked about the process and how frustrating it was. Do you think that do you feel or do you believe that that process or that trend is going more in your favor as you've gone along the campaign trail and have been talking to voters throughout the district?
Absolutely. So I have been trending up. That certainly factored in my decision to run again. So, for example, if I had trended downward and got less votes than a previous election or previous candidates in this race, then I would have factored that into my decision to run again. So, as you mentioned, I've done nothing but um, right? So you might call it more votes in each of those elections. I would say more people are getting to know me, and that certainly has translated into to more votes. So they like the character, uh, they like my experience, and it's just a matter of getting them to know me, and that is costly and takes time. And I have the patience and the wherewithal to proceed.
Running a successful campaign, and some people would say that, if you don't win, it's not a successful campaign. But I do believe that the results from the last election certainly prove that you're gaining popularity, and as you said, people are getting to know you. What have you done differently as far as campaigning from your last election for state assembly? Like, what are the things that either you've decided to do differently, your campaign folks have told you to do differently? What has there been any difference in the way that you've run this campaign?
I think there's been our approach is the same, right? But we've gotten smarter, we've gotten more efficient. I am now retired from the military, so I'm now able to focus. Right, I'm still have my civilian job, so I've certainly been able to focus, give a little more focus this time, and more effort. Not that we didn't put a great effort last time, but and that's ironic. I get a question all the time about, oh, are you able to handle work and campaigning? For Mark, for 30 years, I've had a career in finance, still working. Um, I had a 30-year military career, very demanding with deployments, spent 4.5 years away from my family. I'm married for 25 years, right? And my family is off doing amazing things right now. One of them, which is training to be a pilot in the United States Army. Um, so I've my entire life I've been used. And by the way, within that 30-year period, I owned a restaurant out in Long Island for 10 years. And for a good part, I had been working 7 days a week for 10 years. Um, but I have a great family support system. And getting more back to your question, so I have now not only have I proven to the communities that I was not a one and done candidate, right? I had the organization, I had the resources, I have the energy to pursue it. So I came back, and I came back again, and I will not leave them. I've been my opponent often says I will run for office and then leave. That's not the case, right? At some point I'll leave. I'm not a career politician, but I've been able to manage that dynamic in my life for the better part of my 30 years. And I've proven not only to the communities, but to the Republican Party, the Conservative Party, that I have earned their respect. And the difference is they're engaged now, right? My own party knows who I am. They are certainly giving me, levels of support that I have never received before. They did not see this race as a winnable race. I proved them wrong, and So they are much more involved. They helped us be more efficient. They brought knowledge to the campaign. They brought experience to the campaign. And, I have my same support system. Um, and because of that, I've been able to raise a little bit more capital, which I'm not happy about. I'm not happy about the money that's spent on these campaigns. And, I often get a comment now that you must have her scared because she is spending, from what I'm told, anywhere from 800,000 to $1 million on this campaign. And you know what? If she works harder and decides to do her job a better job, then I'll take credit for that.
Obviously, we've covered it in the wave. This is a two-part question. Number one, how disappointed were you when Stacey decided not to engage in a debate with you? And secondly, having the opportunity to do the town hall or the candidates night at the Bell Harbor Property Owners Association the other night, a lot of things were asked that I felt were questions that were really city questions, not really state questions, and not really targeted for this particular campaign. So explain or try to explain how you're feeling about the ability not to debate, and secondly, not being able to really talk to state issues as opposed to city issues at the candidates night.
So this is where I have a very big disagreement with my opponent, right? And to your point, uh, yes, those were city issues, right? So let's take funding the illegal immigration problem that we have throughout Queens. Okay, um, the city is a sanctuary city. The state is a sanctuary state. As much as she denies it, right? I have the documents and I keep them handy. Um, you could not provide funding. You could not incentivize this as a state legislator, and she funded illegal immigration. So she supported, what became a city issue uh, with all those tents within Queens, but she did nothing to try and stop those tent cities from arising. She did nothing to stop from funding it, although her commercials say otherwise. And qualified immunity. So she claims to support the NYPD, right? As a state legislator, she supports the NYPD, but she has done nothing to fight for and fight the city council or fight the mayor uh, on that disqualified immunity for our law enforcement officers. Meanwhile, Stacey Pheffer Amato and all of our other politicians, they benefit from disqualified immunity, right? Qualified immunity. So, yes, it's a city issue, but as a state legislator, I would promise to fight those issues anywhere I could. So if it means cutting off state funding because of your policies, your anti-police policies in the city, I will cut off funding to the city because of that. So that's what you could do as a state legislator. Um, and, there were a couple of other issues. One of the questions didn't come up, but about their retiree benefits. Um, a judge in the New York City Supreme Court made it sided with the retirees not to throw them out of their current health care plan program. And as a state legislator, I would certainly support the judge's decision to uphold that at the state Supreme Court if it would ever to make it up there. So the answer is yes. There were certainly questions that involved the city, but I, for one, wouldn't sit in the state legislature and say that's a city problem. And I think that's
Yeah,
an
no, it's very important.
injustice to our
I think it's very important because maybe one of the most popular elected officials ever here in Rockaway was Phil Goldfeder. And, Phil, when he was assemblyman, made it a point to get involved, whether it was a state issue, a city issue, a Rockaway issue, even if it wasn't related to, his job description. He would weigh in. He would try to, get together with, people on the other side of the aisle. I mean, he's famous for that. He was famous for that, endorsing, Republicans. I know he endorsed Joanne Ariola when she was running for city council. And, I think that that's incredibly important for any Rockaway elected official. And maybe we're different than other places. Other people might say, well, every place is different. But I think Rockaway is especially different. And I think that with all of the first responders that live here, all of the different people, all the different, specific needs, with the anniversary of Superstorm Sandy coming up, when we celebrate or mark, the 9/11 terrorist attacks and all those, brave souls that were lost that day. Rockaway's built a little different. And I think that our representatives have to be built a little different as well. So I'm glad that you spoke to that. But here,
If I may, Mark,
sure.
you just mentioned several things that I believe, if given the opportunity like this, a voice to the constituents out there. I talk to them all the time, right? So you mentioned 9/11 and the impacts on our Rockaway community, right? I was a 9/11 survivor. I was on the 95th floor on September 11th, and I've witnessed the tragedies and, lost over a quarter of our firm to that. So I experienced that. My father was a New York City detective. My brother, a Secret Service agent, another brother, NYPD, another brother, Port Authority Police, another brother, Fire Department. So who relates, right, to our civil service workers than the Sullivan family, right? And your other choice is career politicians, as you talked, right? Her mother had it for 28 years, I believe. Stacey's been there for 8. But my family's been serving in these law enforcement capacities forever. You brought up veterans and the impact there. I'm a 30-year military officer for 30 years and a veteran. Spent 4.5 years away from my family. So when I get an opportunity like this, I just want to relate and talk to the people within the community that I am the 9/11 survivor. I am the law enforcement family. And I mentioned before with owning a restaurant, right? And I have been affiliated since I've been 14 years old with a family business that's been around since 1938. I started washing dishes at 14, worked the counter and worked the grill, worked the fryolators throughout high school and college. And then after my first job, I would go over there at night and put a couple of hours in. Today, I do the insurances, the taxes, the liquor license, the food license. I pay the daily bills. I was on the phone with the water department this morning. For some reason, after 2.5 years of being on auto pay, I got bounced off of auto pay, and my profile is all messed up, and now they're sending me nasty grams. And so this is what I deal with as a small business owner. So who better to relate to these communities, the veterans, the 9/11 survivor, the law enforcement community, the small business owner, than somebody who's done that? And I had always been involved. I sat on my community board for 5 years as a non-paid board of director. And the first year I got elected was in August, and a few months later, Sandy came along. Not only did I lose my house, but 2,834 homes were destroyed or severely damaged. We didn't know if we were going to exist as a community, as a cooperative. And I was there through that. And part of that, I never left that community in that capacity. So I've done these things and I have the qualifications and the experience. So yeah, do I get a little upset sometimes when a career politician goes out there and tells me she knows better than I do or relates better than to the community? Yeah, I take exception to that.
I really want to ask this. It wasn't something that I prepared. It was something that I thought of as you were speaking. And I know that Councilwoman Joanne Ariola has been very vocal about all of the first responders and city workers. And again, this is a city issue, but it's something that I think speaks to the Rockaway community. So many city workers, so many NYPD, FDNY, EMTs who were forced off the job, fired because they did not acquiesce to the mandates. And the wave was in favor of people getting vaccinated in the beginning because we really didn't know what we were dealing with. I myself got vaccinated because I'm a diabetic, so I had to. I wanted to make sure, but I don't know if I would have if there was a mandate. And a lot of these people are still out of work, and there seems to be no priority from anyone. It hasn't been mentioned in all the endorsements and all the different things that have been talked about during this campaign. No one's really addressed outside of Joanne Ariola that I know of about these people who are still out of work because the mandates that have been lifted now since I believe 2022, these people can't get their jobs back. What would you do if you're elected? As far as that's concerned, how would you try to help these people get back to work?
Okay, so first, quickly and upfront, I fully support them getting their jobs back with back pay. Okay, and I'm going to explain here in a second. And I certainly would fight for any state, level. And again, a city employee, I don't brush that off as not being my responsibility, right? These are the people that my neighbors that lost a job, or somebody else in the Rockaway Peninsula that lost a job. We all know somebody who lost their job and benefits. Okay. But let me go back. So I've been in the military 30 years. Okay. Um, there's a certain level of trust that we have to give our government. Okay. So I've had shots that the average person has never had. Anthrax, right? Didn't go well. Typhoid, right? These were all malaria pills that made me sick, right? But these were all, and I sat there and go, as I sat there getting the anthrax and smallpox and all these shots, it was never a problem. I first got activated in 2003. Nobody said a word about getting this shot or that shot, and so we did it. The difference, here's the key difference. Our leadership at every level of government failed us. We did not trust them. We could not accept that. So what pursued was a fight. The city, the state, the federal government, we discharged officers. We discharged people because of their religious beliefs that had true religious beliefs for decades. But now the government chose to fight them, and the government chose to be vindictive. And the government, whether it's the state, the city, or the federal government, they failed us at every level. Poor leadership, Mark. Poor leadership. I learned the definition of leadership when I was 19 years old on one of my first exams for the military. It's the art of influencing somebody to do something that they would not normally do. And where does that leadership come from? Because they trust you, because they know you're competent, and they know you have your best intentions for their safety. So all of a sudden, after decades upon decades of generations and generations of fighting pandemics like polio, measles, mumps, and rubella, the dictates of you cannot come to school, it was for our personal protection. But somewhere along the line in this whole COVID mess, they decided to turn it into a political football, and they failed the common people. And this is what you get: a divided nation over a very important issue. I went out, I got the shot, right? Number one, I was told to. And I believed it was for my protection. Now, do I judge others, or if they have a true religious belief? I will fight for you at every length of the way. I did it in the military, and I would do it in the state legislature. They would have my full support, all because leadership failed us. And that's the difference I would propose to bring to Albany, is some leadership based on good character, 3 decades of experience in many areas. So that's how I see that issue. I would fight for these, and I've been at many events with Councilwoman Ariola. I spoke to many of these firemen, one of which is running for state assembly up in upstate New York, and we keep in touch for that reason, and just being both candidates and giving a good ear to.
So, one of the difficulties I think in when you're campaigning against an incumbent, and the incumbent, whether it's Stacey Pheffer Amato, whether it's Joe Adabo, they have an advantage in the sense that they're in office, so they can pass laws, or they can introduce legislation, or they can uh, you know uh, give gifts, taxpayer funded things that look like they're providing this. But as an incumbent, it's hard to fight that, right? Because this is what they're elected to do. They're elected to do their job and make sure that the taxpayers get the best bang for their buck.
Mhm.
And when you're not an elected official, and you're running against that, um, like, how do you process that and use it in a way that helps your campaign? Because, like, you're fighting against an incumbent, and then you don't even have the opportunity to debate those things. How do you deal with it when you're talking with constituents, when you're talking with uh, people who haven't made up their minds yet as to how they're going to vote? How do you fight that, the incumbent's advantage in being able to, fund that volunteer firehouse, or go to a local
Yeah,
civic and
yeah.
take a photo op and give them money? Like, how do you fight that?
Right. So there's quite a bit to unpack there. So let me first
Sorry.
let me first start by saying that when I ran against Senator Adabo, I have the utmost respect for his character, but he respected me that I had the right to run for political office from day one. And ever since that, our daughters played on the same volleyball team. We constantly shook hands at the gym at Scholars Academy. I called him on election night to congratulate him and wish him the best of luck. And we remain very cordial and very good friends. And it doesn't have to be that way. When I decided to run against Stacey Pheffer Amato, how dare I? She was entitled to this, and her mother got involved and engaged, and they went around to people who decided to support me, and had some not so kind words for that. So is how is that for character assassination, uh, one by one? So when I knock on a door, I say, "Sir, ma'am, sorry to disturb you. My name's Tom Sullivan. I'm one of your candidates for the New York State Assembly." And I go to hand them the literature and I say, "I appreciate your consideration. Please take an opportunity to, search my background, my experience, and the policies to which I support." And I say, "Thank you very much." And that's all I ask. I ask for people to be, taken into consideration, the character of the candidate, the experience of the candidate, which builds competence, and what policies do you stand for? And that's all anybody could ever ask of a voter to do is be fair and considerate. And when you're running against an incumbent who feels entitled, those are some of the challenges you face, and you just got to work harder, and you got to work longer than they do to get name recognition, and share your policies and with the voters. So it takes time.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for making the time today. I know you're really busy with everything and campaigning, and The best of luck with your campaign. I look forward to seeing you down the road and on election night.
No, thank you to you and the Wave to giving all candidates a voice and an opportunity to appear before the, either your constituents or future constituents. And, it just goes to show you the value of fair and honest media. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. It means a lot.